54? Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Desert Farmer Podcast. It is episode 54. Just checking the monitors there. So welcome to the podcast today. It is April, and towards the end of April, right? So we got one more week, actually less than a week of April, to give you guys an idea of time of year. So, because the actual year doesn't matter, does it? I mean, we know what day today is, so we're good. I digress. So we got a few things to cover today. Topic of today is one that we get questions on from time to time. But before we get to that, got a couple of housekeeping notes. Housekeeping note number one would be from this one right here.
If you have a question that you would like answered, just write the word question, preferably in caps, before you actually state your question. Doesn't have to be in caps. That way we make sure we don't miss it, hopefully. That way it stands out and
Yep. So Lori's going to be down in the comments, so she'll be hanging out with you guys today. But just doing that for her will help her identify questions versus chit chat. So housekeeping note number two, as always, is give us a thumbs up. So if you like what we do here on the podcast, would love it if you would do that. It helps us not only today to invite folks to be here with us, but it helps us as this video goes into the logs of the podcast here for Edge of Nowhere. So got a few things we want to cover today, including a taste test. If you guys follow us on Instagram and Facebook, you saw us posting about this fruit right here. We have 4 different varieties. You got a couple over there. Got 4 different varieties of loquats that are all basically ripe or ripening right now. So we're going to try these with you guys today. So make sure you guys hang in there for that. All right, so a couple highlights that we have for this week. I took a couple notes. What was the first one? Might be the only one.
highlight would be, we're continuing the work on the pole barn, so we got some more work done this week.
Mm-hmm. What did we get done?
They are actually starting, we're having, they got the posts put in for the corrals. And then they are starting, we're doing part of it concrete, and so they got the gravel packed in before they pour on either Monday or Tuesday.
Yep, so that's packed down, and they're pretty much ready as far as I can tell.
Yeah,
they're pretty much
put up and everything.
Yeah, forms are up. We are going to have it reinforced. There's going to be some rebar reinforcement because we want to be able to move pallets across there, so we want to be able to get some super sacks. We got some ideas as far as how we might be able to do that without heavy equipment, because we have a pallet jack now, thanks to Nate and Tara. At least we're borrowing it while we have space for it and they don't have anywhere to use it on, concrete-wise. But if we can figure out how to do that, we want to be able to move heavy pallets across there, so we're going to reinforce that concrete a bit. But hopefully we'll get a video up for you guys here over the next few weeks. We want to get it complete and have all the corrals complete before we give you guys an actual video and give you guys a quick tour. So we will be running electric to it and water, right? So we talked to Jake, so we're waiting for a quote on that. So hopefully we'll be able to get electricity over there. We did run conduit in with the expectation that we would have a building back there that we wanted to include electrical on. So we have an electrical conduit, so that's ready to go. So we just need to connect to the panel and get it back there. So yeah.
Okay.
I think the only other highlight is harvesting season has really started. So we have begun mulberry harvest. We showed you guys that last week, and the mulberry trees are doing really well. In fact, the contorted mulberry is giving us more than it ever has.
Yeah.
And they are pretty tasty. So
Not bad.
yeah, they're not bad. Not as good as the Shangri-La.
No.
But the Black Pakistan had a tremendous fruit set. I mean, it was an incredible fruit set, but we had some very, very strong winds come through. And as is the case with Black Pakistans, for those of you who own them or want to, they do not hold their fruit well. They don't hold it well before they're ripened or even as they're ripening. So you had a lot of fruit drop on there. We lost 95+% of green set fruit blown right off those trees. So a bit of a bummer, but either way, we've got that. We're going to be doing a taste testing for you guys, so we'll get a video on that. We won't do it today, but we are going to get a video so you guys get an idea of the taste test on each one of those different varieties, because we get that question all the time. Hey, speaking of varieties, so we opened up the nursery. If you guys know, we had 4 different varieties of trees that we had propagated for us by Chris, our propagator. And think we had over 100. It was just over 100 trees that we were nursing through the summer last year. Came out of dormancy just great this year, and we've sold all but a handful, right? So we've got a handful of the Black Pakistans left, a handful of the Shangri-La left. We got a few panaches left. I think we got a good amount of panaches, 15 or 16 of those. The Violet de Bardot did well too. I don't remember how many we have, but we opened that up to the public with our farm tour here. I think it was last week or the week before, and sold through the vast majority of the trees. So we may continue to do that. Have it kind of kicking some ideas around. I don't think we want to bother Chris with that next time, but we may do some propagation on our own to simplify things for us as well. But,
yeah, we have Eric on here, so he'll be here tomorrow morning
picking
up some trees.
Perfect. Eric, it's a good thing you're coming because there's only a handful left.
Yeah, and he was on our original list, and I guess didn't get the email or
had a disconnect with email.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
Yep.
I hope that's not the case with other people. And
I don't know. Maybe they're.
But I had more than half the people respond, so it's weird.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Hard to say. It's email.
Yeah.
So, all right. We got, see if we have any questions I can answer here real quick before we get into the topic of the day, because everybody wants to know how to get more fruit off their trees, and that's what we're going to be talking about.
Is it too late in the season to plant fig trees?
Okay, so I would not say that it's too late, but you're really pushing it. So if you don't want to delay anymore. They need to get into the ground right now. And if you're planting them this late, I would say, we don't shade trees. If they don't come out, if they don't start growing very rapidly in the month of May, you may, see what I did there? May. So you may want to shade them a bit. So for the summertime, just kind of watch the tree and see how it does. I will tell you, generally speaking, young fig trees do pretty good in the heat. It's the older fig trees that tend to struggle a bit. So at least in our experience, but yeah, you would need to do it pretty much today or tomorrow, if you're going to still be planting those, because April is pretty much the cutoff, because you already know 100-degree days are basically upon us. They're very, very close, and those very, very hot, dry days are only a month away in June. So, yeah.
Do your grapevines have fruit set? We have been out of the country for 3 weeks, and we saw bud break before we left. Suspects high winds while we were gone. Yeah, so we
do. I don't know how the fruit set's going to be yet because they're still kind of flowering. The flame are the furthest along, and there is some decent fruit set on the flame, and that is our most consistent producer from year to year. I was looking at the other ones today. Zinfandel are just starting to put on flower groups, so clusters. I don't think I saw them on the Cabernets. If I did, they're just starting to go. The Thompsons have some on them, and the Manukas have some on them. So yeah, so they, for the most part, they are. Our new variety, the Blanc du Bois, we finally got some bud break on those. We planted those. We got them really late because they don't. The nursery doesn't start shipping. It's a vineyard. Doesn't start shipping until the beginning of April. So we planted those a couple weeks ago, and we have 2 in a pot, 6 in the ground. 3 of the 6 in the ground either have broken or have bud swell, so they're about to break. And the 2 in the pot looks like they're both have buds that are just starting to break as well. So yeah, so that's all good news. It looks like everything came out of dormancy. Well, almost. Got a couple of those brand new ones that haven't quite gotten there yet. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
What's the usual cause of not getting many peach flowers compared to the year before? Not enough chill hours?
That's what we're covering today. So that's a good segue. Were there any other questions?
If I can't get the plants in the ground now, will they make it in their pots over the summer? This is Eric for the trees.
Yes. Yeah, Eric, they definitely will. We had one tree that was 1 season older that a good friend of the farm, Kevin, bought, and it was another year older, and yes, it's fine. So if you're not going to plant those, and you can wait, that's not an issue, but if you are not going to plant them, put them underneath a tree or in mottled sun, and then make sure that the roots can go down into the ground through the pot. All of our trees did that over the summer last year, and as soon as that happens, you'll see they grow much stronger. And they're going to do their normal midsummer dormancy, but when they come back out in the fall, you'll see they really take off because they'll put roots down into the ground. So if you're able to do that, then yeah, they're just fine in pots.
Yeah, and we're watering them pretty much every day.
Yeah,
it won't hurt.
It won't hurt to water them every day. So yeah, that's what I would do. Yeah. All right, we good?
Yeah.
Because we have the question, so let's go ahead and get into it. If you can go into my notes, because I am going to follow my notes here a bit. So you guys know that we ask you guys for questions that we can cover here on the podcast. A lot of times I'll take questions from comments on old YouTube videos, and this one was a comment on an older YouTube video, and they were talking about their peach tree, and it seemed to be that they got a very good fruit set the first year, and here they are in the second year, and there's almost no fruit set on the tree. So they were asking, is that normal? Is that a problem? Am I going to lose the tree? We had all these different questions. We went back and forth just a little bit. And I thought, this is a good topic because people have this concern or question as they have their trees get older and go through, different seasons. So I have some notes, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to kind of go in order as far as things that would have the most significant cause to have a lack of either fruit set, and it's mainly fruit set. So it takes into account flowering, so a lack of flowering and or fruit set. So these things can affect both of those. Usually it's flowering because if it's not a pollination issue, then it's a matter of the tree producing enough flowers. And there are times when, in fact, every year the flowering is going to be a bit different because of a myriad of reasons. So as we go through these, realize that some are more critical than others. Some things you can't fix, but some things you can take into account as you're looking at your tree going through. So the first one is variety. So, we're here in the desert. We have a certain amount of chill hours. There are some parts of the country where there's no chill hours, or even less than we have here. So like some tropical places, Hawaii, Florida, certain places in Southern California, especially as you're in Southern California, closer to the coast, you have less chill hours. That's time below 45 degrees. So the variety is important for a couple different things. The first one would be you have climate. So you have high humidity or low. You guys know we're very low humidity here. You have chill hours, like I was just describing. So all these things you can't change. They're part of the environment. And so choosing the right variety for said environment is number one. So it's very common for especially your big box stores to have varieties available that will never produce or potentially never produce in certain areas. We see that here in Arizona. It's very common to see peaches. Apples in particular is probably the one that I see the most often, where you have different varieties that people would see in the grocery store. Doesn't mean that they're going to do well here. Lack of humidity. We have summers that are way too hot and dry, so that combination is really bad. And then they are trying to ripen fruit in the middle of our summer when all trees here are basically going dormant. And so the variety is very important, and that goes hand in hand with rootstocks. So, proper rootstocks are also important. Now, rootstock is not going to necessarily affect the amount of flowering and fruit potential. However, if the tree's struggling, it definitely will. So an improper rootstock can definitely do that. And of course, anything to do with planting. We talk here about planting depth. Make sure that you're not planting it too deep. You need to be able to see the root crown on the tree. That goes for everyone. Here in Arizona, because of our caliche layer, just slightly, you want to see a little deeper than the crown, so you can see the tops of some of the roots. That would be fine as well. So anything to get it up away from that caliche layer, because you have a hard time with water penetrating that, and so you don't want that basically sitting right on top of that. You want to give it some space to grow down and of course out. So that's important. Make sure you're mulching, and then I know I had a couple other things in here. What was my next? Fertilization. Yep. So make sure you're fertilizing. Excuse me for just a second. So fertilization is important, and make sure you're utilizing either a fruit tree fertilizer, which really honestly is probably ideal. You have fertilizer or fruit tree fertilizers, especially here in Arizona. If you're going to a big box store or any of the local nurseries, you'll see that some are specific to citrus. The reason being that's an evergreen as opposed to some of your other fruit trees. So it needs a bit more nitrogen. So you'll see that those are specific to your citrus trees. And then you just have like a general fruit tree fertilizer. Realize that those are formulated so that it does focus on flower production. Your, say, desert adapted trees like your mesquite tree, your palo verdes, some of these other trees, sisu trees, these trees have unique requirements. However, they're not producing a tremendous amount of flowering, or they're not producing it all at one time. So like you're flowering on your mesquite trees or catkins. So it's not quite the same as producing, a colorful, beautiful flower around an entire tree. So the fertilization needs are specific. Now, if you're using composted manures, that's what we do here. We found that those are good as well. We use both chicken manure that has been aged, which is a very common ingredient in a lot of your organic fertilizers. And then we use a composted pig manure. And with that, we are now adding chicken manure to that to up the nitrogen content, because I think we're a little bit too low in nitrogen, just looking at the trees. A few of them getting some chlorosis, which I think is a matter of that. So, but if you're sticking with your commercial fertilizers, you're going to be just fine. So fertilization. What else I have? I think I was talking about stress, right?
Yeah, irrigation.
Right. So stress is going to be another issue for a tree. I think we had talked about that a little bit earlier. If you plant it too deep, that stresses a tree out. Different variations in irrigation, moisture content in the soil, whatever is happening to you as far as the environment is concerned. So the weather, all of those things can stress a tree. We talked about chill hours. Chill hours, there's some question about the real importance of chill hours and whether or not it's a requirement in some of your deciduous trees. I'm of the opinion that it probably is. There's been enough research and time and studies done on that. Is it as impactful as maybe some people think? Maybe not. But we have found that trees that have a higher chill hour requirement, we struggle with. They don't produce as well. Our piacatum is a good example. I think that's the highest chill hour fruit tree we have here, and we've only gotten one piece of fruit in 4 years, going on 5 years. So flowered real heavy this year, and I don't see much fruit set on there. Mm-hmm. So that's a good example. We still got a lot of flowering, not a lot of it set. So again, that back to the variety, but stressors. So improper fertilization can be a stressor. Make sure you're mulching your tree. That does make a difference because of moisture content. So these are things that you can control. Some things you can't control. Your weather. So that is probably the biggest factor that can impact the flowering and, most importantly, the fruit set. We find that particularly in our early flowering varieties. So our Florida Prince peach can struggle from one year to the next, and that's because it flowers at the end of January, and our last frost date is February. And it's common for peach trees across the country to struggle with that because they're generally pretty early. So, you get if you get a flowering and you get below freezing, you will lose a percentage of those flowers and or the crop. And even if fruit does set, you'll have a lot of fruit damage. So we see that pretty commonly as well, especially out here in Whitman because we're a bit cooler than you guys are in the city. So not uncommon for us to see some fruit damage, and we also see some variation in the amount of fruit set. So now you also have just varieties. Some varieties are going to be heavier producers. We find that with our peaches. So back to peaches, we have our Florida Prince peach trees are generally very consistent from 1 year to the next. And then we have other varieties that generally don't produce quite as heavy. So for example, the early amber really never gives us heavy crops of fruit. Pretty rare that we see a heavy crop of fruit on that tree. And so the variety can definitely be a factor in that as well. And you may see that from time to time. And then lastly, something that some people don't take into account, you can see this across several different types of fruit. So you'll see this in citrus, you'll see it in pome fruit, and you'll see it in stone fruit. I don't see it as often in berries. I'll be honest with you. We don't see this issue in berries. And I think part of this is because it's all production on new growth. And we generally don't see it in figs either. And that's kind of the same thing. It's production on new growth. Whereas these other ones have fruiting spurs or it's production on last year's growth. So maybe that has something to do with it. But you do have that also in citrus, which we've seen on certain varieties, and that's alternate bearing. And so these are trees that will naturally bear heavy one year, and under the same identical conditions, the following year they'll produce and bear a lot less fruit. And so we do see that from time to time. So I know we see that the early amber, even though it's not heavy, that is definitely we've seen that be an alternate bearing tree for us. Some citrus like our I don't remember if it's the Cara or the Arizona Sweet, but it can be a bit alternate bearing. I know we saw that with one or two of the mandarins, and I don't remember which variety. It doesn't seem to happen with lemons. Lemons produce heavy, especially the Meyer lemon produces heavy year to year. I don't really see that with limes either. They pretty much produce heavy year to year. And I don't see it with grapefruit. So the grapefruit tree pretty much produces heavy from year to year. But you can have specific trees and or varieties that will be alternate bearing, and it's typically varietal. So there's certain varieties that will tend to be alternate bearing. So those are all the things I think I had on my list. If Lori can check for me while I take a drink of water here.
Yeah.
And come up for breath. So you can see there's a lot of factors that go into the amount of fruit. Now, of course, there's a lot of other things too. You know, a young tree is generally not going to bear all that heavy, although we've seen the reverse be true. It comes out of the shoot with a whole lot of flowers and tries to put on too much fruit, and it shouldn't. It's too young. But typically, you know, an older tree is going to do that. A very old tree is going to have the opposite. So it's going to actually start producing less and less from year to year. Of course, pruning can definitely be a factor in the amount of flowering that you get. You know, we've talked about this in a lot of our pruning videos, but making sure you're not removing fruiting spurs. And at the same time, eventually that fruiting spur will die. So it'll start to peter out. It varies by variety and type of fruit. Usually it's a few years, and then that fruiting spur will start to die out. So, you know, all those things are factors. So back to pruning, you know, if you're pruning your peach trees, you're pruning off all of last year's wood, well, you're going to get less, you know, so those things definitely affect that. And then with your trees that produce on new shoots, remember, you need to prune. Otherwise, they're going to continue to produce higher and higher up on the tree, and eventually that tree is going to max out in height, and there's really nowhere for it to produce fruit anymore. So you want to make sure that you're continually pruning those from season to season. So those would be your fig trees and your berries. Those would be the most common ones. So your mulberry trees and your fig trees, those would be examples of that. So, but I think that's most of my notes, right?
Yeah, that was your notes.
So I want to make sure I've answered questions, because I know there was a question going into that I want to make sure we answer.
Yeah, what's the usual cause of not getting many peach flowers compared to the year before? Not enough chill hours?
Right. So it could be that. You also have a matter of, we were just talking about pruning. So that kind of takes it's a few things into account. If one of the things that we've seen on our trees is obviously they fruit on new wood, and so, or last year's wood, so growth that occurred last year. And as the trees get bigger, you know, you have a branch that's this long this year, and then it starts growing from here. Well, all the peaches are out here at the tip, and so the rest of that, it's the trees still having to maintain all of that wood, but it's not going to flower on that. It's only going to flower on the ends. So that's number one. Variety, we had mentioned that before. So some varieties. We don't typically see it in the Florida Prince, but I have seen that from one year to the next on our tree on the old farm. So I don't know whether or not that was chill hours. It's possible. A change in maybe how we pruned it, that's possible as well. But especially with peaches, because they tend to flower early, if it's a matter of number of flowers, this isn't the case, but losing flowers to weather or wind can definitely be a problem. So, yeah. What else?
Pakistan mulberries, do they grow on new or old wood?
So Pakistan, all mulberries grow on new growth on wood that is at least a year old. So it can grow anywhere. So you get a shoot from the trunk, that can have mulberries on it. You get shoots from the end, any of your branches, any of those can and usually do have mulberries on them. So, and that's one of the reasons why that tree has a tendency to set really, really heavy, because it's a big tree, and we pruned them back pretty well this year. We did a good amount of pruning this year. We've seen some explosive growth and a massive amount of fruit set. We just mentioned earlier that we lost them to the wind, which is very common with the black Pakistan, unfortunately. So, but yes, as with the rest of your mulberry trees, your production, the catkins will form on new growth. And you'll typically see that the catkins will form before or at the very same time as the shoot and leaves do. So you usually see them right away.
What is the best way to plant a fruit tree in clay dirt? I live in North Carolina.
Okay, so very similar to us. We have a pretty high clay content in our soil here, especially in certain parts of Arizona. But very common for us, it's rock hard dirt. Eventually it turns into concrete, just darn near concrete for us with our caliche layer. But it's similar to the issues that we'll face here. Number one, it's a fantastic medium to secure the tree. So there's definite benefits to it. Number two, it will hold moisture, which I know I probably don't need to tell you. You're already seeing that. So clay holds moisture a lot better than sand does. So there's some definite benefits. We talked a little bit about getting the right rootstock. I don't know what those would be out your way in the Carolinas, but you want to make sure that you have the proper rootstock. Rootstock is going to be the key factor in whether or not the tree is going to survive and thrive in your heavy clay soil. And then we talked a little bit about making sure that you don't plant too deep. That is critical. So much the same as it is for us here, make sure you're seeing the root crown when you go to plant the tree. So you want to plant it basically on a mound. If you watch our planting videos, it would be the same process for you. If you're planting a bare root tree, realize that tree is going to sink quite a bit. So make sure again you're planting on a mound so that you can peel away or pull away some of the dirt if the planting itself sinks a bit into the soil, because of course you're loosening all that soil when you go to plant. If you have a potted tree that you're buying from a nursery, make sure you're pulling back the potting soil until you see the root crown or flare. It's where you have your trunk here. Again, your flare comes out this way and your roots start to come out. You want to see the tops of those roots, okay? So make sure you're doing all of those things. And again, don't plant too deep because you need to make sure that those roots and everything can breathe a bit and they don't get waterlogged. And you can control that a lot more when the tree itself is up on a mound, okay? So one of the things that you may hear, and I've seen it in permacultural circles and seen it with certain types of trees, it works okay, particularly with trees that are native to your area. So we can do that with mesquite trees here in Palo Verdes. For you, I don't know what those trees would be, maple or something, I'm not sure. But any of your native trees, planting them in a shallow hole actually might be beneficial. However, for your non-native trees, that may not be ideal as far as the roots for the soil. You want to give it every chance to survive, and those things will help. One other thing, mulch. So mulch is critical for us here to hold moisture in. For you, it's balancing moisture. So if you have too much moisture going on the tree, mulch will help to regulate that just a bit. And it will also help to make it consistent. So if you go through a dry spell, your ground can harden very, very quickly because of the clay content, turns into bricks. And so having some type of mulch or live mulch, some type of ground cover will definitely help that as well.
So high desert here, west of Kingman, we are going to be doing half moon cultivation. What kind of grasses, trees, fruit, and vegetables would you recommend for half moon cultivation?
I don't know what half moon cultivation is, so I can't speak to that specifically. So
I think it's basically like swells and stuff.
So is it like a
so you basically
semicircle swale?
Yeah.
Okay, so is it so are these guilds? You'll have to let me know if they're guilds. So I'm assuming you're growing all of these things in the same place. If that's the case, Lori's looking it up here, so I'll take a peek at it too. But as far as your grasses, they're going to be similar to us. So you obviously you're a little higher elevation, so you're colder. But I don't know what natural grasses you have there, and I don't know the name of our natural grasses here. So I think if you're cultivating the soil through I don't know if you're doing livestock or anything. No, that's not going to help me.
A rainwater harvesting technique consisting of digging semi-lunar holes in the ground with the opening perpendicular.
Okay, so
to
water
the flow
flows
of
this.
water.
The water flows this way, and you've got half moons that come like this, and so it basically captures the water. Okay, and if you're doing guilds, so I'm assuming there are guilds inside each one of these. Clarify that for me if I'm wrong. So number one, if it's a fruit tree, you do not want grass with it, ever in Arizona, and the reason why is they will absolutely outcompete that fruit tree for nutrition and water. Period. Don't do it. Now, if you want to attempt that once the tree is established and you have very fast growing trees, that's fine. However, there are not any fast growing fruit trees here in Arizona because none of them are native to Arizona. So the exceptions would probably be your mulberries, and I would say mulberries will probably be your exception. So like the only exception. Nothing else is really going to be able to outcompete those grasses, especially if you get a very good one. So, and at least for the first couple of years, my suggestion is do not plant anything with it. Don't plant any ground covers with it. So if you're going to design those semicircles, swales and berms, go for it. Go ahead and do that. Plant your fruit tree, let it establish. Then come back, once those roots are established, then come back and plant your understory. If you try to do both of them at the same time, the tree is going to probably struggle. Again, back to mulberries. If you're going to be planting a mulberry like a Shangri-La or a Black Pakistan or even a Persian, those are very fast and aggressive growing trees. So those may be an exception. So I would say if you're planting those, you might be okay. But it's still a matter of competition. So I would plant the tree, let it establish, let it accumulate all the water that accumulates in your half moons. All mulch it nice and heavy. Let them establish first, then come back and do your ground covers and your understory. Okay, again, because you're talking about fruit trees.
Well, it says what kind of grasses, trees, fruit, and vegetables.
Okay, so if it's not a fruit tree,
it might not necessarily be
right.
A fruit tree.
So if it's not a fruit tree and you're planting it, the same thing still applies. You don't want to have it out competing or competing against grass. So, and then as far as grasses, I don't know. I know sorghum does really well for us here. It's perennial to an extent. So it's not an annual. None of them are going to be annuals for you up there anyway. I'm not a fan of Bermuda ever, especially when you're talking about having other plants in there because they will overtake everything. So we never brought Bermuda here, but it followed wood chips onto the farm. It is the one area on our farm where we have Roundup. One area, and it's that specific area, and it's trying to stop that from spreading because it will spread like wildfire and it will take over. So I would definitely wouldn't do that. But like your perennial rye, if you're going to overseed, you can definitely do perennial rye in the wintertime. It'll probably last a lot longer for you there. Some of your other like typical grasses that you would find in the Midwest, Timothy and things like that would probably still be okay for you. It's just the middle of summer. The only thing that's probably going to survive is sorghum. Because you're still very, very hot, just like we are down here. So I think you're going to find that that's probably the case. Now, there may be some other suggestions that folks up your way have for you, because I'm not sure there. As far as other fruits, blackberries for sure. In fact, understory, a blackberry would be fantastic, especially once again you get that canopy tree in. The Primark blackberries should do wonderful for you. And just like they do for us down here, because they survive our heat, they thrive in it. They do fantastic. And it's a good, strong, aggressive root system. And so it should survive okay. But just remember, strong, aggressive root system is going to compete with other types of plants. So the other thing would be sweet potato. So sweet potato will do well for you there. It does well for us here. Once you plant it, you won't ever have to plant it again. Even if you wind up harvesting all the tubers, you will miss some of those roots. And as long as you're keeping moisture, which I'm assuming you will, so as long as you're keeping moisture in the ground, those will come back every single year without fail. Other things too, obviously, as far as cover crops, cowpeas will do fantastic. Great nitrogen fixer. That is a summertime nitrogen fixer for us. The other one, if you want to do, is alfalfa. Alfalfa we do in our primary chicken pasture. It survives our winters. It may not survive yours, so it may not be perennial for you, but it is for us. That is also a good nitrogen fixture, and that's the opposite, or that is also during the summer, just a longer window. The cowpeas don't do really well until it gets really hot. You can plant those in the middle of summer. Alfalfa you plant about now, so you pretty much plant it now, so that it sprouts well, so it germinates well. We'll be planting right behind all of our pasture chickens here in about a week and a half. And so that alfalfa will go in, and it'll survive the summer and pump out all summer long. It does great in the fall, great in the spring, and it does survive and grow during the summertime. So those are some good options.
All right, we got Masood on here.
Hey, what's up, Masood? Mahaba. Masood.
I don't know what it says here. And then Mary has fertilization is coming up in May. Does it matter if you do it early or late in the month?
Doesn't matter at all. So
it takes me the whole month.
And we'll actually have to do that. And we're going on vacation, so we got to cram that. Maybe we'll just have Gayla do it when she's here. But so yeah, anytime in the month of May is fine. Assuming that you're following the February, May, September schedule, which means you're using some type of granular fertilizer or a compost or something. All you're doing in May is you are feeding the tree throughout the summer months and into fall. And then your fall fertilization is taking care of your winter and into spring. So that's kind of how that works, because it takes time for that to break down. It's usually about 30 to 60 days, but it can vary for a lot of different reasons. It's probably longer on this farm because we don't have as much moisture around the trees as most of you guys probably do. So so anytime in May is fine.
All right, so we are caught up with questions, so we may want to go into
Let's do it.
Taste testing.
Yes, of course.
If not, we'll run out of
All
time.
right, yeah, very good. So, so we're going to start with the Big Jim. So we have 4 different Loquat trees. The Loquats are really weird this year.
We have 5, actually, because we put a Yehuda in back in October.
But there's no fruit coming off of there. We have 4 varieties here today.
Yeah, we have 4 varieties of fruit.
All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to start with the Big Jim. This is the Loquat that's very common to find in big box stores, so they're very easy to find. You can see a couple different size ones there. This guy's a little more ripe, which I wanted to make sure we picked. That one's a little more size-wise about what they are. They get bigger than that, too. So probably a little bigger than a ping pong ball, I would say, on this particular one, and they get even bigger than that. So we're going to go ahead and here. You want to just split this one?
Sure. How are you going to split it? That's not an easy fruit to split.
I'm going to eat. I should have grabbed a bowl or something.
Should have grabbed a wet rag to wash our hands with.
So here is a Loquat. If you guys haven't had one before, they look similar to maybe like a apricot as far as the kind of shape. But the skin, it's shiny, kind of like those can be. Or a plum, I guess a little bit like a plum, right? Mm-hmm. So, and they have multiple pits inside. So I do like to keep the stems on there. We've kind of learned to do that because the stems break off very, very easy when you're harvesting. And so we'll keep the stem on there. It makes the fruit last a lot longer. Otherwise, if you lose the stem, you probably won't be able to see that, but there's a hole in the top of that now. So it's gonna go bad pretty quick. But I'm gonna go ahead and take a bite. I've got one pit.
Bowl to...
I don't. Go ahead. Hit that. There's one of the pits right there. So, whoop, there we go. How many did you get? Only 2. So we've gotten up to like 5 or 6 out of one fruit. So there's multiple pits in there. How about that? How's that taste?
It's very good.
So skin's a little thicker than I think sometimes, but
I usually peel the skin off.
Oh, okay. So yeah. Well, I didn't. So that's really good. I've got another one here. Here, we're going to be chowing down on those. Very good. We had a farm tour last week, and I asked people to explain how that tastes. I had 2 different people up there, and they gave completely different examples of what it tastes like.
Isn't that amazing?
Yep. And so I said, well, it tastes like a Loquat, right? And everybody's like shaking their head laughing. I'm like, I don't know how else to describe it. It tastes like a Loquat. So, but just a mixture of different things. Citrus. I've heard citrus. I've heard berries. I've heard apricots. I've heard plums. I think melons, there's kind of a little bit of melon.
I think it has more kind of like a texture of a really ripe melon, but then it does have a little bit of like a citrusy tangy in there as well.
Yeah, tangy and sweet. A combination of the two. So this is good. This is a champagne Loquat. It's a little bit smaller than the Big Jim. This is probably one of our favorites. Now, this is the earliest variety to ripen. This year, it did not ripen well. It's covered with fruit, but a lot of damage on the fruit. I think it's because our winter was way too warm. That's the only thing I can ascribe this to, because usually this is a consistent producer. We've had it ripen as early as the very end of March. Typically, it's the beginning of April, and usually by now it's done. So the fact that we still have some trying to ripen tells me that something happened. We're talking about fruit set and all these other things.
Yeah.
This one, it didn't do quite so well. Let's try it though.
Giving me the little butt here.
What'd you just say? What'd you just call me? Did you just call me a little butt?
No, I said you keep giving me the little butt.
Oh, I'm about to say. Good thing you said butt's a family show. So 3 pits in that one too. No, 3. See, the pits are a little bit smaller. That tastes really good though, doesn't it?
So good.
I started with the Big Jim because we had our first Big Jim. Well, I used to eat them when I was in Southern California, but we had our first Big Jim here in Arizona last year, and it was fantastic.
So good.
Usually the Big Jim is right after the champagne, so to get these at the same time is a little unique. The champagne still tastes better, doesn't it?
The champagne tasted better. Last year I thought the Big Jims tasted better.
Yep, I think it's because we were done eating the champagnes.
That Yehuda though.
Oh, I know, it's not there yet.
I know.
All right, so you got 2. So what do you have over there? Finish with that one. That one was a shocking one.
Okay.
You have Macbeth.
Yeah, so we
Right.
got the Macbeth here. So here's
So this one we have a disease on the tree. So I don't know how long this tree is going to last, but either way, so you can see. I would say it's probably, these are usually about the same size as a champagne.
Yeah, this is actually a Macbeth also, so this one was a little bigger.
Yep, so you can see, get an idea of size. So they're about the same size as the champagne. The Big Jim can get a bit larger, but Macbeth, Loquat.
Squirting out the bottom.
I'm not going to say anything. Nothing. I don't need to make everybody sick here. Sorry to hear that, though. I'm sure it's viral. Hey, that's pretty good. How many pits?
I hate eating on camera. It's horrible. I'm like dripping down my shirt and everything.
Oh, this
I
is
had-
really good.
I had 3 pits. 4.
What? I only had 2. Give me those.
Okay. I need,
Okay.
oh
Very
my
good.
goodness.
You know what? Yeah, you're making a mess. So, you know what? I will tell you, it seems like the skin is a little bit thinner. Definitely thinner on that one than it was on the Big Jim. So, and similar flavor to the champagne. Very good. So we do wind up losing that tree. We may have to get another one. Maybe I got these pits separated. Maybe we just drop some of these pits into a pot. Pits in a pot. All right. So that was number 3. Number 4. Okay. This one.
Daryl says that Dwayne seems darker than usual.
Oh, yeah.
That's getting more sun since working from home.
I wish. Goodness gracious.
He's trying to get some sun because we are actually going on vacation in the month of May.
To be specific, we are going on a cruise. We haven't been on a cruise since, 2002?
Yeah.
We haven't really been on a vacation since 2010.
10.
But either way, so this is a gold nugget. Little tiny guy. So he's I would say probably the diameter of a quarter, maybe? If that. Like
If that,
a quarter
yeah.
might be a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
But either way, these are really small. This is the latest ripening fruit. So the fact that this is ripe now really tells you that our weather was screwed up this winter, because that's when all of these trees set their fruit, is the middle of winter. So you guys, if you remember, we had very, very warm weather, which has really thrown off all of these fruit as far as ripening. Now, typically this fruit is ripening end of May. So I think I have it in my notes that it's May/June. And if you guys know, once we start rolling into June, fruit has a really hard time ripening because it's way, way too dry. There's just no humidity in the air at all. So typically this fruit never really fully ripens. It gets wrinkly, it's dry, and it just doesn't taste very good. I got a lot of pit. How did I get 4
I
pits in
got
that?
3 in this little thing. You got
I got
4?
5. There's 5 pits in there. That one wasn't fully ripe, but that one was not dry at all. So that had a good amount of moisture. That was a good flavor. I would say
there's because it's so small and all the seeds in there, there's not much flesh.
Right,
And that's the best part.
correct. So that one has. People ask us about. I'm going to relate this to kumquats because I like saying the name kumquats because I say it a lot because it's a cool name, kumquats. So kumquats, we have 4 different varieties that we've tried: the Nagami, the Miwa, the Fukushu, and the Centennial. And the Miwa is a very, very good kumquat. And it is a nice balance of sweet and tart. It's a really good one. The Fukushu, though, is better, in my opinion. And the only reason is because the Fukushu is very, very small, about the same size as those golden nuggets, actually. And there's a lot of seeds in there. And so there's not a lot of flesh on the inside, and there's a tremendous amount of seeds. And I don't eat the seeds, so I wind up spitting out a whole bunch of seeds. There's very little flesh on the inside, which is actually where the tart's coming from. And then you have the skin, which is usually a bit sweeter. But because of the mass quantity of seeds compared to all the other things that you're actually eating, I don't prefer the miwa because of those things. But it's a decent kumquat. Same thing here, I think, with this one. I think the biggest challenge that we have with the gold nugget, this is the first year. I had one on off the tree before we came in here. I told you right before we got started, it was the best tasting one out there. And so these just weren't completely ripe. But the challenge is the size of the fruit. It is much smaller, and it typically ripens much later. So I think we're going to really just be challenged with the gold nugget because of that very late ripening.
Yeah.
So, but loquats, loquats. It's a quat.
All right. Loquats. Yeah.
Yeah, really good. Fantastic fruit for us here.
They're so good, you guys.
They taste really good. And if you haven't had one, I don't know what to tell you. Grow one.
Find someone that has one so you can go try them. If you decide to plant one, we found the best time to plant a loquat tree is in October. So don't try to find one now and plant it because it will struggle too much in the summer.
If you're here in Arizona, don't plant it now. I'm going to keep going. You done? Oh, there was only one pit in that one.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was a good size one. Okay, so looks like we're caught up here. Everybody was watching us like drip all over ourselves. I like totally drip all down my shirt.
Yeah, it's everywhere. That's great. All right, very good. Well, we can wrap up early. That's fine. So if you guys have any other questions, go ahead and drop those. Excuse me. Let me continue chewing. So if you guys have any other quick questions, drop those into the chat here for us here real quick. But we can always wrap up early and just get to having our little bit of happy hour here. What do you say? I'm down.
I've already started my happy hour right here.
I see that. So, you guys, one of the things we had mentioned earlier is, we want to make sure that this podcast is centered around you. We really want to make sure that we're providing a service to you guys and a place for you guys to ask questions and interact with us here. And we'll do our best to give you our honest opinion. And you know what they say about opinions? It's worth what you pay for them. And I'll leave it at that. But we'll give you our honest opinion on whatever topics you want to discuss. Obviously, we focus on the farm here and what we do here on the farm. Fruit trees is a big part of that, so you see that a lot. One of the things that you'll see here this year, we're changing a bit how we approach YouTube. We've been doing YouTube since 2017, so we're going on 8 years. It'll be 8 years in July.
It's a lot of work, you guys.
It's a lot of work. We posted at least once a week that entire time, sometimes twice a week, a couple times, 3 times a week. And it does take a lot of time and effort. One of the things we found is we have a large library of content that's there to varying degrees of quality. But we do have a lot of content, and we find that a lot of times we're talking about the same things we have in the past. And so we've already covered a lot of these topics, but people ask questions on some of these old videos, or they have questions in general. So this is a great format for that. So you'll find that you're going to see us here pretty regularly. We're going to do it for the most part once a week, as much as we're able to, but we want to make sure it's centered around you guys and questions that make sense, things that you guys want to know about. So please make sure you're sending those to us. You can email us. You can text Lori. Her phone number's all over the internet. Facebook and Instagram. You can message us here on YouTube. You can a lot of ways to contact us. So you can send us a piece of mail. That'd be weird, but hey, you want to go for it. Be cool.
I would love to get a letter in the mail.
There you go. See, she's old school.
Someone send me a letter.
Yeah, but we'd love to see those questions so that we can answer those here live, and of course interact with you guys here as we go. All right, so that is kind of the focus this year. You'll see other content from us as well. We are a holistic farm. It's a good way I like to describe it. We're talking about fruit trees, which are fertilized by our animals. Our animals fertilize. They're a joy to watch. They also feed us. So, we integrate all of those different things. So it's very integrated here. We've really forsaken the animal husbandry side, and you'll see that more from us here this year. on the channel because we want to make sure that we're covering that. It's a big part of our lives. It's a big part of the farm business. And we've learned a lot of things when it comes to animal husbandry here in Arizona. And we know there's folks out there that want to see that. So please, if you have questions about that, we're going to continue. We're going to really start to focus on that and shift a bit on our regular content here on YouTube. So you'll see that starting with the pole barn here coming up. And of course, we can answer those questions here as well. So, but we want this to be formatted around you. So, any last questions, or are we going to wrap up?
No.
Wow.
That's it.
Unbelievable. Okay, well, that'll work. So, just want to thank you guys for being here today. You know, we tell you guys this every week, but it's a true statement. The most valuable thing we have here on the planet, it's not gold, it's not silver, it's not Bitcoin, it's definitely not the US dollar. It's time. It's a limited resource for all of us. And you guys choose to spend some time with us. We don't take that for granted. Just really appreciate you guys being here and spending time with us throughout the week in all these different formats. We really do appreciate that. It's very encouraging to us, and we hope that we're encouraging to you as well. So just remember, this was the Desert Farmer Podcast, episode 54. I hope this was a good one for you. I had a good time. It was nice and short and sweet, but hopefully action-packed and information-packed for you guys, like it is every Saturday at 2 o'clock. Arizona time, that's where you will find Lori and I. But until then...
Unless we have something going on. Like, we're going to go on a cruise, so we won't be here that Saturday.
You won't see us here that Saturday. The Saturday after, you'll see us a lot darker. Yes, no doubt about that. But just want to thank you again. And until next time, just want to remind you, if we can farm on the edge of nowhere...
So can you.
Mm-hmm. Bye, everybody.
Bye.